Daenerys and Jon Snow are not feeling too hot when we last left them in the books. Jon quite literally is very cold as he's been, punctured, full of holes, and is just bleeding out in the snow. And Dany isn't doing much better. She is alone, very much alone in the middle of the Dothraki Sea, with just Drogon, and she has just been found by that big Khalasar. So you could say that they're both a little vulnerable, maybe not in the best position they've ever been, and so with that, what are my predictions for where they will end up in Winds of Winter when we eventually get that book? Yeah, if you want to be a negative Nancy and say, oh, we're never getting the book, yeah, type it in the comments, boost the video, I don't care. Now, I've talked before about how I feel like Daenerys and Jon are kind of mirror characters. They mirror each other in their actions. They're going on very similar trajectories in the story. They're both learning how to become leaders and dealing with the common pitfalls of developing that skill set. And we watch as they eventually, achieve these like high level positions of leadership and how they function once they actually have them and the struggles that they come to deal with, etc., etc. And with this in mind, my predictions for Winds of Winter is going to be a continuation of that mirroring, but maybe taking a slightly more dark turn. Because I think the thing that we need to remember is that where they are left off in the books, they're both in very literally vulnerable positions. Jon has quite literally just been betrayed. He has been betrayed by the very people that he has been struggling to lead and protect to the best of his ability. And no, I don't think he's going to stay dead. I think it's pretty obvious, especially since, I think that's a very big thing very early on for the show to change. I don't think that they would do that, but that's just me. So I do think that we will be getting Jon Snow resurrected, but probably a different flavor than the show gave us with him. But I will get to that in a second. Meanwhile, Daenerys, if you'll remember, at the end of Dance with Dragons, she has basically flown the coop. She has left with Drogon. They were in the middle of Daznak's pit, where they had reopened the fighting pits, something that she was utterly disgusted by, as she too, like Jon, has struggled to basically impose empathy on the people that she's suddenly in charge of. Like, Jon has to, teach the Night's Watch, especially, the older members, and Westerosis in general, how to, not be racist towards wildlings. And meanwhile, Daenerys has to keep convincing, these former slavers that, hey, slavery is bad. Can we just value some human life for fuck's sake? Mm-hmm. But then we have the whole thing with Daznak's pit. Drogon shows up. She, tries to protect him because they're trying to hurt him. And then they fly off together. And then she is, suddenly isolated, alone in the Dothraki Sea. She is ill. She's having hallucinations. She's literally, at her most vulnerable, at her most alone, after what has been kind of an abject failure up until this point. A failure which matches Jon Snow's. Everything that he has tried to instill has all been undone by the fact that, oh, these guys really don't respect me to the point where they, offed me. And Daenerys is same thing. The situation she left is everything that she had been trying to avoid. Personal a stamp of approval on these gross systems that she's been trying to eradicate, in this case the fighting pits. So both of them have now found themselves in a position of utter failure. They have failed at the thing that they were trying to impose, as I said earlier, empathy. And they've been punished for it, one with death, one with isolation. And so I think we are going to get a darker version of both characters in the next book. Now, I don't think that's going to be the case for them, for the remainder of the series, but I do think that Winds of Winter is going to be where they flex their muscles a little bit and probably go a little too far in what they're trying to do and the means that they're willing to, take things. Now remember, this is just my opinion, so let me justify why I think that. Jon, first off, I think we're getting a much darker version of him than we did in the show. In the books, we are told time and time again that being resurrected has an effect on you. Whether great or small, there is something that is fundamentally different. If you are brought back, all the Lord of Light, you are basically a fire zombie. You are the same as the White Walkers when they bring back people, but in the fire version. You are just this angry imprint freeze frame of the last moment you were alive, and that's all that's really been brought back. So there's pieces missing, there's humanity missing. However, of course, it's complicated further by the fact that Jon is a warg. So Jon will have a second life when he passes, or he has the potential for a second life when he passes, because a warg can basically jump into the animal that they're connected with when they pass. And we know that Jon's last word, right after the stabby stabby, was ghost. So we can assume that he hopped into ghost. So, while we don't know the exact means of resurrection, we can only speculate. I think there is going to be a combination of fire magic and a combination of his mind being protected within Ghost. But even with that, there are, I think, going to be some issues, because once you warg into your animal and once you stay there for, an amount of time, your minds do start to meld together. And I assume that process goes a little quicker once, your other body is just flat out, gone. Like, you're not hopping back. So if Jon is in Ghost's body and is slowly doing the mind meld thing, if he then gets, ripped back out, what's that gonna do to him? I think at the very least, if we're not getting, some kind of parts of his humanity like fully being gone, a la a Lady Stoneheart, a la a Beric Dondarrion, I think we are gonna get something weird in like the mind melding with the wolf. Again, we've established that as a danger too much up until this point for it not to be used. Because this is a concern that is like dropped multiple times for all of the wargs. Like, careful that you don't stay in there too long, because you do slowly start to acquire like the animal's characteristics the longer you stay in their mind. And then when we learn about second lives, in that you can jump into, your animal and like live a second life after your human body dies, we learn that process happens, but like completely, like you fully merge eventually with your animal. So I think some version of a wolfy, more aggressive, more animalistic Jon is going to be resurrected. Meanwhile, Daenerys she's been having these hallucinations, these crazy hallucinations in the Dothraki Sea. And the general, gist of them, that's the word. The general gist, why am I saying that, is that she's kind of like forgotten who she is. She's forgotten her Targaryenness, because up until now, she has tried to be like the diplomatic ruler. She doesn't want to be like her ancestors. She wants to find these compromise solutions. Let's figure it out. Let's talk it through. And we've seen, similar to Jon, how that hasn't worked out for her. And so all of these hallucinations, it's Viserys, it's Quaithe, it's Jorah Mormont, are basically all telling her, remember who you are. You are Targaryen. You are fire and blood. You are all this stuff. And so I think she, as she's, going through these hallucinations, is having kind of like a rebirth, a reset. And with it, she's going to lean more into the more stereotypical elements of her family, of her lineage. She is going to bring the fire and blood. But I think it's going to be in service to her ultimate goals. So her ultimate goals is to rid Essos of this slavery. Yes, she does want to get to the Iron Throne, but the Iron Throne feels like the culmination of a mission where she's freeing people for her. And so I think this is going to mark a transition where Winds of Winter is going to be her very aggressively pursuing her goals. The compromising is done. No, we end the practice, we end it now, and we are ending it with fire and blood if necessary. And so, similarly with Jon, if Jon comes back and he is now this more aggressive version of himself, if he's a slightly darker version of himself, I think whatever goals he sets for himself, I think the immediate one will be dealing with Ramsay, because that was the final straw that led to the whole, pokey. Because he said that I got the pink letter from Ramsay. He says that he has my sister. I'm gonna go down. Anyone who wants to come with me, we're gonna go take him out because he's a danger to the Night's Watch too. And so now that he's alive again, whether he stays in the Night's Watch or not at that point, I think he is going to start taking on these personal missions and just dealing with shit. He's not going to be practicing the empathy. He's going to be no, you either listen or you get the fuck out of the way, or I'm going to, wolfy bite you or stab you, whatever, Now, for both of these characters, this isn't to say that I think this is where their headspace is going to remain for the rest of the series. Because remember, after Winds of Winter, there is supposed to be one more book. Who knows if we'll get it, but I don't think that this will be the new them permanently. Because I think the point of a transition, of the dark turn that I see kind of both of these people going towards, is they need to go too far to know when to pull back. They both need to realize that they've hyper-focused and they need to broaden their lens and realize that there is a greater danger that is affecting everyone. And so we need to refocus so that all of humanity can be saved from the true danger of the others. And at that point, they'll pull back and reset and go, we're ready to face the others. Okay, good night, y'all.